Welcome back to Witch Hunt, the podcast where we unravel the mysteries and histories of those accused of witchcraft. This week, we are spotlighting the 5 innocent women who were tragically hanged together as convicted witches at Proctor's Ledge in Salem on July 19, 1692. You won't want to miss our other Witch Hunt victim story episodes on Sarah Good, Elizabeth Howe, Susanna Martin, and Sarah Wilds, released earlier this week. I'm Sarah Jack, a direct descendant of resilient Salem Witch Trial victim Rebecca Towne Nurse. The witch trial story of Rebecca Nurse stands out for its unfathomable tragedy. Today, I invite you to join me in reflecting on her enduring legacy and the strength she embodied. The world redeemed from superstition's sway is breathing freer for thy sake today. This quote from John Greenleaf Whittier are the last lines of the memorial poem on the Rebecca Nurse Monument at her Homestead Museum. Breathing freer for thy sake today. Breath was huffed and panted in affliction. Breath was held and paused in fear. Pleading breaths wheezed and gasped. Breath was crushed from lungs with weight. Breath choked and spit as it condemned. The last breathed words hung from the gallows. The last gasp. The dying breath delivered the final twitch. Then the hunt ran out of air and these hunts ceased. Now let's exhale with easy resting breath. Rebecca and her fellow persecuted accused witches are at rest. They have been acknowledged by their descendants in society and are memorialized through education, monuments, ceremonies, family societies, media, the arts, books, poems, photographs, podcasts, and conversations between us all over the world. In 1621, William and Joanna Towne welcomed their first child, baby Rebecca. Rebecca was born in the town of Great Yarmouth, England, and was baptized at St. Nicholas Church where her parents, William and Joanna, had married a year earlier. A version of that building still stands today, having been reconstructed after the bombings of World War II. She was the eldest of 8 children. After Rebecca, her siblings John, Susan, Edmund, Jacob, and Mary were born in England. After emigrating to the Massachusetts colony, the Townes had 2 more children, Joseph and Sarah. Sisters, Rebecca, Mary, and Sarah, would later become known as the 3 Towne sisters accused during the Salem Witch Trials. But before the trials, they were just sisters leading seemingly ordinary lives. There was nothing about their Puritan lives that stood out as strange or unusual. This ordinariness makes their eventual persecution by their own community all the more compelling. They were, by all accounts, regular settlers until 1692. When accusations from afflicted young girls, young ladies, and powerful peers led to their arrests. In fact, there is a common notion that their mother Joanna had been an accused witch first, but there are no court records indicating that is true. This tale arises from a misinterpretation of baseless accusations. There are no records of Joanna Towne ever being accused of witchcraft crimes. Ann Putnam Sr., who relentlessly accused and targeted Rebecca, making outrageous claims like Rebecca's specter attempting to murder her by choking her, an accusation we know to be absolutely false, testified that when a rumor about Joanna Towne being a witch was repeated, it caused the illness and death of a Putnam relative's infant. However, this is a misconception. Given the lack of documentation on any accusations against Joanna, and considering Ann Putnam Sr.'s behavior of making outrageous claims against Rebecca and others, this story about Joanna being an accused witch doesn't hold water. It lacks credibility, and it isn't corroborated by anyone else on the record. This accusation is simply calling Joanna a witch after her death. Despite the wild nature of accusations against a 70-year-old woman, in such poor health that she was bedridden, Rebecca was one of the innocent women charged with covenanting with the devil. Rebecca was deeply concerned for the afflicted youth in her church, and was utterly astonished to find herself among the accused witches. When she was accused initially, she desperately wondered what sin was in her. She searched within herself for any wrongdoing that might have caused her suffering, but found none, because there was none. Knowing this to be true of herself, Rebecca stood her ground during her examinations and trial. Those around her, including her family, recognized her integrity and stood up for her. Rebecca and her husband Francis managed a 300-acre farm situated in the heart of Salem Village and raised 8 adult children. Many folks in the community came to her defense, but not all of them. Not enough of them. The case of Rebecca Nurse is well documented through a series of preserved records. The fact that numerous families were divided, with some supporting the accused and others accusing people of witchcraft, highlights the intense and polarized atmosphere surrounding these trials. Rebecca was arrested on March 23, 1692, under a warrant signed by Jonathan Corwin and John Hathorne, and faced multiple accusations and examinations. Despite statements of support from community members and a petition of support signed by 39 supporters, the numerous testimonies against her, particularly from the Putnam family, Reverend Samuel Parris, the Ingersolls, and several afflicted individuals, led to her conviction. Rebecca made great efforts to prove her innocence, including a petition to the magistrates for a fair body evaluation after the first one identified her natural features as a devil's teeth, and she also wrote a dynamic appeal against her acquittal reversal. Nevertheless, her conviction stood, and a warrant for her execution, along with 4 others accused of witchcraft, was issued on July 12, 1692, a week before the execution would take place. Her doomed timeline is preserved by digitized documents. Here is an overview of most, but not all, of her trial documents. Listen to the names and how they were involved. On March 23, 1692, her warrant was signed by Jonathan Corwin and Magistrate John Hathorne. On that same day, Rebecca Nurse was arrested by George Herrick and brought to Ingersoll's Tavern. She was examined in the Salem Village Meeting House. She received statements of support from Israel Porter, Elizabeth Porter, Daniel Andrew, and Peter Cloyce. Ann Putnam Sr. and Ann Putnam Jr. gave depositions against Rebecca Nurse and Martha Corey. On March 25th, Edward Putnam gave a deposition against Rebecca Nurse. On March 30th, Samuel Nurse and John Tarbell made statements supporting Rebecca Nurse. In April, she was in chains. On May 1st, 39 community members signed a petition in support of Rebecca Nurse. Here are the last names of those 39. There were 8 Putnams, 4 Ray, 3 Phillips, 2 Porter, 2 Bishop, 2 Hutchinson, 3 Holton, 2 Andrew, 2 Cook, 2 Swinnerton, 2 Osborne, 1 Leach, 1 Felton, 1 Endicott, 1 Buxton, 1 Aborn, 1 Herrick, and 1 Sibley. On May 31st, Abigail Williams provided testimony against Rebecca Nurse and her sister Sarah Cloyce. On June 3rd, Rebecca Preston and Mary Tarbell made statements supporting Rebecca Nurse. That same day, affliction indictments were filed against Rebecca Nurse by 7 afflicted individuals: Abigail Williams, Ann Putnam, Mary Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Walcott, Ann Putnam Sr., and Susanna Sheldon. On June 28th, denying that she had a witch's teat, Rebecca Nurse petitioned the court for a more skilled evaluation of her anatomy. On June 29th, Nathaniel Putnam petitioned in support of Rebecca Nurse. John Putnam Sr., Rebecca Putnam, Nathaniel Ingersoll, Hannah Ingersoll, Sarah Bibber, Samuel Parris, Thomas Putnam, John Putnam Jr., and Hannah Putnam provided testimonies and depositions against the Towne sisters, Rebecca Nurse, Mary Esty, and Sarah Cloyce. On July 3rd, Rebecca was excommunicated from her church. Sometime shortly after this, the Nurse family took documentation to Boston to appeal to Governor Phips, who did give a reprieve on her conviction. But the relief was short-lived. A magistrate persuaded the governor to reconsider the pardon, and he revoked it. On July 4th, Thomas Fisk, a juryman, declared about overturning Rebecca Nurse's acquittal. That same day, Rebecca Nurse appealed her case in court. On July 12th, a warrant for the execution of Sarah Good, Rebecca Nurse, Susanna Martin, Elizabeth Howe, and Sarah Wilde was issued to George Corwin, the sheriff, by Deputy Governor William Stoughton. Rebecca steadfastly maintained her innocence, and her words preserved in the trial papers reveal her determination to be recognized as innocent. In the numerous trials, many witnesses testified about their disputes with the accused over various matters. However, with Rebecca, there was only one notable dispute, and even that was a stretch. The only recorded instance of her anger was when someone's pig broke into her yard and damaged her crops. This minor event was the sole example of her losing her temper. Rebecca was blindsided with immense humiliations and heartaches as an accused witch. She was pulled from her sickbed and locked in jail. Her body was searched for devil's marks and scrutinized. Her pleas and logic were dismissed by magistrates and government officials as she listened to the heinous accusations from her church community, branding her as a devil-following, cruel witch. She felt the weight of their condemnation. Her lifelong faith was scrutinized, and her church membership officially revoked by the Salem Church. Despite numerous people signing petitions proclaiming her goodness and unwavering character, her initial jury acquittal was reconsidered by Magistrate Stoughton, and the jury overturned it. And the final kick in the teeth, the governor granted a reprieve, then revoked it, officially sending her to the gallows. Ultimately, her beautiful life was cut short by a painful hanging in public scorn. Her story stands as a powerful reflection of the devastating impact of witchcraft accusations and injustice. I encourage you to visit the Salem area and the Rebecca Nurse homestead in Danvers to learn more about her story and pay your respects to her memorials. You will find her beautiful monument dedicated by her descendants in the community on her homestead. This historic site includes her original house, the 300-acre farm she managed, the Nurse family cemetery, and a replica of the Salem Village Meeting House. When I visited the homestead, seeing the expansive cooking hearth struck me deeply. Hearth cooking was central to this dedicated mother, foster mother, and grandmother, serving as the heart of the home where she brought her family together. It was here that she toiled, preparing meals that nourished her loved ones and fostered family unity and warmth. This hearth was not just a place for cooking, but a symbol of her hard work, dedication, and the familial bonds she nurtured. This is where Rebecca Nurse cooked to nourish her loved ones. Those she nourished at that hearth are the ancestors who linked descendant DNA directly to her. But wait, there's more. Rebecca Nurse is included in 3 other memorials. The Salem Witch Trials Memorial, dedicated in 1992 in downtown Salem, features stone benches with the victims' names and their actual words protesting their innocence. The Proctor's Ledge Memorial, established in 2017 at the determined execution site, includes a marker for Rebecca Nurse and the other victims. In Danvers, Massachusetts, the memorial dedicated to the victims of the Salem Witch Trials is called the Witchcraft Victims Memorial and was erected in 1992. These memorials collectively contribute to her respectful memory in the broader history of the Salem Witch Trials. Learn more about all this in an amazing biography by Dan Gagnon. He authored her biography called A Salem Witch: The Trial, Execution, and Exoneration of Rebecca Nurse. You'll enjoy getting a fuller picture of Rebecca's life, trials, and her devastating execution. It really shows how harmful spectral evidence was to these victims. To Rebecca. Dan's biography gives many details on what life was like for them prior to the witch trials, what roles her husband Francis had in the community, and how hardworking they were. Read her biography, listen to Dan's episodes on this podcast, and celebrate Rebecca Nurse's mark on this world. Are you a descendant of William and Joanna Towne? You can meet your Towne cousins through the Facebook page called Towne Cousins. Research their history and your ancestry with the Towne Family Association, and meet your Towne cousins at the annual reunion. Don't miss out on the 2024 annual reunion in Salt Lake City, Utah, August 22nd through the 25th. Rebecca and her fellow persecuted witches are at rest. They've been acknowledged by their descendants in society and are memorialized through education, monuments, ceremonies, family societies, media, the arts, books, poems, podcasts, and conversations across the globe. Despite this, did you know that although Rebecca Nurse and some other prosecuted accused witches of Massachusetts have been legislatively exonerated, they have never received an official apology? According to Massachusetts General Court exoneration legislation, the blame is still placed on the devil for deceiving the court. We believe it's time for new legislation that acknowledges the court's responsibility for this injustice and offers a formal apology. Such an apology would not only honor the memory of the deceased, but also impact today's society by addressing historical wrongs and supporting current victims of injustice. This project is also working to have the 8 convicted witches of Boston exonerated. If you want to be a part of this effort, join us in the Massachusetts Witch Hunt Justice Project.